All right. Today we're covering life in West Africa. Who can start reading and tell me more about the people of the region and more about the ethnic group living in Africa? Laura, go ahead.
The people of the region. West Africa is the most populous region of Africa. Many different ethnic groups live there, and each group brings something unique to their country's culture. Ethnic groups. European countries that carved up Africa to add to their overseas empires had their own reasons for setting colonial borders where they did. They did not consider the borders of the different ethnic groups of the Africans who already lived on the land they colonized. As a result, the European colonies in Africa contained populations that were ethnically diverse. Many African countries declared independence. The new national borders closely followed the old colonial borders, preserving that diversity. Establishing a sense of national unity is difficult. However, many people have a stronger identification with their ethnic group than with the country they live in. For example, the Hausa are citizens of Nigeria, but many feel closer ties to the people and culture of the Hausa than to the country of Nigeria. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Another factor working against national unity is that West African ethnic group does not typically live in only one country. Some Yoruba people, for example, live in Nigeria. Other Yoruba live in Benin. No matter where they live, the Yoruba feel a closer connection to other Yoruba people than to Nigeria or Benin.
All right. So if we're going to be explaining more about the ethnic groups, at any life lesson, we start with mentioning the ethnic group that live in Africa. But actually, we said before in the history lesson that European countries have been craving Africa as if it was a cake and they were splitting it among their empires. So this have left a huge impact on the African countries. Although after independence, they did not consider the borders of different ethnic groups of the African, but they kind of preserved the ethnically diverse. We have only one problem when we are talking about the ethnic groups, which is establishing a sense of national unity. Why? This is the first question here. Why it is difficult to establish a sense of national unity in any country with different ethnic group? Number one, because people have a stronger identification for their ethnic group than with the country. This is number one. And number two, or the second factor, which is working against unity, is that people with even the same African ethnic does not typically live in one country. So we have two reasons make establishing a sense of national unity is difficult. So again, the question here will be, what makes establishing a sense of national unity difficult? Number one, people with a stronger identification with their ethnic group, have a stronger identification with their ethnic group than the country they live in. Number two, people with the same ethnic group does not typically live in one country. And he's here giving us an example of Nigeria, that people of the Hausa, which are the citizens of Nigeria, maybe not have closer ties with other ethnic groups. Why? Because some of them are living in Nigeria, for example, in Nigeria, as other live in Europa or other live in Benin. So they live in different countries, which means that they don't have closer ties. They don't have closer ties. Is it understood, or do I have to repeat this again? Do I have to repeat this question again, guys?
No, thank you.
So the question here, why is establishing a sense of national unity is difficult. Okay, let's talk about the languages. Bhumika, Bhumika, you were raising your hand. All right, Ritesh,
Good morning, Miss.
good morning, Ahmed.
ناس معلش اتأخرت بس النت عندي كان قطع.
No problem. I'm gonna just take a screenshot of the attendees now. I'm giving you 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Miss,
Okay,
I begin.
yes, please.
When West African countries achieved independence, the majority held on the European language that had been used most in business and government. During the colonial period, the European languages, English, Portuguese, and French, became the official languages of West African countries. In some cases, Arabic is also an official language. Most ethnic groups retain their traditional languages, and many use the language more than they do the official European language. In some places, European and African languages have intermixed to form a pidgin language. A pidgin is a simplified language used by people who cannot speak each other's languages, but need a way to communicate. Sometimes two or more languages blend so well that the mixture becomes the language of the region. This is called a Creole language. Creole is the language spoken most often in Cape Verde. It is a Creole language, part Portuguese and part African dialect.
Okay, let's summarize this. Let's explain more about the languages of West Africa. Actually, because it was colonized, so the three main languages will be English, French, and Portuguese. So these are the official languages of West African countries. This can come like complete. The three official languages of West African countries will be English, Portuguese, and French. We also have, in some cases, Arabic as an official language. So we have four official languages. Again, English, Portuguese, French, and sometimes Arabic. We also have something called Pidgin. And Pidgin is a language, or actually a simplified language, which is used by people who cannot speak each other's language. So they have come up with a simplified one in order to communicate. See, they blend more than one language. Yani maybe they blend African and English. This is a pidgin. The Creole is one way of this pidgin. Creole language is spoken most often in Cape Verde, and it is a language, it is part Portuguese and part African. Okay, these are the languages. Let's move to the religion. Hannah, Hannah Hani.
Okay, Miss. Islam was introduced to North Africa in the AD 600s and it spread southward with trade. It was well established in many parts of West Africa long before the arrival of Christian missionaries from Europe. Today, a sizable portion of West African population are Muslim.
So Islam is considered one of the official religions there. Okay, continue.
In some countries, however, Christianity is just as dominant as Islam, or more so. Even in countries where Christianity or Islam is dominant, many people still practice traditional African religions. These religions have their own rituals and celebration that tie communities together. The beliefs are not written on paper, but passed on from one generation to another. Often the people believe in a supreme creator, God, and are animists, which means they believe in spirits, spirits of their ancestors, the air, the earth, and rivers.
Okay, so if we are talking about religion in West Africa, we'll be mentioning 3 points. The first one, that Islam is considered one of the main religions because it was introduced to North Africa at the beginning by traders. Then it was well established in many parts of West Africa along the arrival of the Christian missionaries from Europe. But actually, we have a sizable portion of West African population are Muslims. So we have Muslim people and we have also Christianity as a part of the religion. How did Islam manage to go there? By traders after reaching North Africa. Christianity is just as dominant as Islam. So people are whether Muslims or Christians, but in some countries, Christianity or Islam is not dominant, and some people still practice their traditional African religions. So they also have Islam, Christianity, and traditional African religions. طب what do they believe in? They believe in that something that they have supreme creator, which is their God, and something called animists. What are the animists? They are the spirits of their ancestor, and also the air, the earth, and the rivers. How do they have a holy book? No, they don't have a holy book. Their beliefs are not written or on paper, but they are passed from one generation to another orally. Okay, let's talk about the settlement patterns, how they are settled in there. Laura, go ahead.
Yes, miss. West Africa had a very few large towns until the colonial period. Even today, the most common settlement patterns in West Africa consist of scattered villages. Villages represent the homesteads of extended families, or families made up of parents, children, and other close relatives, often of more than two generations. The size of the villages and the population density depend on how much human activity the land can sustain. Water is an issue in the northern parts of West Africa, so populations are small and spread out. Most of the largest cities in West Africa are capital cities like Bamako, Mali, which more than tripled in population between 1960 and 1970. When droughts cause people to migrate from the countryside, the largest city in West Africa is Lagos in Nigeria. With an estimated 10.5 million people, Lagos was Nigeria's capital until 1991. Abuja is now Nigeria's capital city.
Okay. What I want from here, how did the nature affected the settlements pattern of people in West Africa? Actually, or let's make it another question. What is the settlement pattern in West Africa? Number one, people live in scattered villages, not in large towns. Number two, villages represent the home of extended families or families that are made of parents and children and close relatives. So their homes are only for extended families or the original families. So it could have one or two generations at the same house. Number three, the size of the villages and the population density depend on the human activity. If they can find, for example, land to farm and water, they will be settling down. But actually, water is an issue for them, which forces them to be small sometimes, and sometimes it makes them to spread out. Also, most people are living in places which have human activity and water source. That's what I want. I don't want the last part with the large cities and so on. So how do people, or in what way people have their settlements pattern? Again, number one, few people live in large towns. Most people are living in villages, in in homesteads of extended families, and families are made up of parents, children, and relatives, and maybe one or two generations living in the same house. People live or settle down, or the population density depend on their human activity and the availability of water source. Okay, that's what I want from this part. And I'm gonna cover a little another part of this lesson. Then I'm gonna continue the rest, inshallah, tomorrow in the class. Then I'm gonna revise the whole lesson on Thursday. So let's talk about life and culture in the region. Let's talk about the daily life. Hannah Hani, go ahead. Hannah Hani, please.
The life or life and culture in the
Start
region.
from the life and culture in the region, then the daily life.
Okay. A variety of cultures thrive in West Africa, some of them traditional and some contemporary. Countries in the north, such as Mali, Mauritania, and Niger, are more influenced by the culture of North Africa than are their neighboring countries. Daily life. West Africa, with its complicated history and rich mixture of ethnicity, has a diverse culture. English or French may be the language of the cities or of business and politics, but hundreds of other languages are still spoken. People in cities are more likely to wear Western style clothing and to live and work in Western style buildings. Far from the city, many people retain the traditions of their ancestors. These people are more likely to wear traditional clothing. Life in rural villages is built around the extended family. In cities, the nuclear family, parents with their children, is the more common family structure. City dwellers are far more likely to deal with a wide variety of people over the course of a day than are rural dwellers. Capital cities teem with people from different ethnic groups, races, and countries. They are more likely to speak the official language because that is the language they all have in common. In rural areas, ethnicity and tradition are still important. Devotion to traditional values keep those languages and cultures alive, even as the country is changing. The downside is that ethnic pride sometimes results in conflicts between neighboring ethnic groups.
Okay, so if we're talking about the daily life in West Africa, it's very complicated. Why? Because it's a mixture of different ethnicities and diverse culture. Because they are speaking different languages, they are having different religions, they are practicing different businesses and politics. So you'll find that life there is really a mixture. People in city, this is number one. If we're going to explain about the daily life in West Africa is actually a mixture. Why? Because they are speaking different languages, they are practicing different religions, and they are also practicing different economic activities. People who live in cities are likely to wear Western style clothing and live and work in Western style buildings. But people who are living in villages, they are still keeping the nuclear family. They are living in extended family houses, as we mentioned before. They are living in something called the nuclear family, which is parents living with their children. And also we have the city dwellers, which are far likely from to deal with wide variety of people. They are moving from one place to another. But actually, at the end, capital cities team with people from different ethnic groups in order to communicate. They are speaking the official language, but among them, their groups, they are speaking their rural languages. And they still devoted in order to keep their values, their languages, their cultures. And even as the country is changing, but the ethnic pride sometimes results in conflict between different ethnic groups, because we said before that still people are devoted to their ethnic more than their country. Okay, that's it for today. Anyone want to ask any question about the quiz, the homeworks, the lesson today? Anyone want to ask any question, guys?
No, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, see you next session, inshallah. Bye.